Rest in power to a legend and to the man who called himself the Sonic Midwife.
I am Broadway, the lyricist, homie, just let me do my thing. I'm on top, on my grind, I'ma always get it.
If you ever listened to A Tribe Called Quest and felt that bass hit, deeper, fuller, more alive than anything else you've ever heard on the radio, you felt the work of one man. If you ever put on Erykah Badu's Baduizm and wonder how a voice could sound that warm, that close, like she's singing just for you, you felt this work. If D'Angelo's Brown Sugar ever made you close your eyes and just breathe, that was him too. His name was Bob Power. And if you're not familiar with that name, by the end of this video, you will be. We lost him on March 1st. He was 73 years old. Guys, thank you so much for clicking on this video. I'm Broadway the Lyricist. I'm a hip-hop enthusiast and cultural storyteller. If you're a fan of hip-hop commentary, history, or anything related to the culture, be sure to hit that like button. And if you're new here, consider subscribing to the channel and click that bell icon so you guys never miss an upload. Bob Power was born in 1952 in Chicago, Illinois. His family moved to Rye, New York, and then to St. Louis, Missouri. And it was there that a young Bob Power first fell in love with music. The story goes that his sister got a guitar, he picked it up, and that was it. He went on to study classical theory and composition at Webster University in St. Louis, while simultaneously playing in a rock and roll band called The New Direction. From the jump, Bob Power was never just one thing. He was a musician and a student of sound. After college, he headed west. He earned a master's degree in jazz from Lone Mountain College in San Francisco, and during his California years, from 1975 to 1982, he composed the score for PBS's Over Easy. He was writing jingles for Coca-Cola, Hertz, Intel, and Mercedes-Benz. The man had range, real range. But in 1982, he made a move that would change everything. He packed up and went to New York City. Now, New York in the 80s, by Power's own account, involved some wild gigs. He played mafia weddings in Bensonhurst for $75 a night. He performed in psychiatric hospitals. He took every gig that he can get. But that hustle, that willingness to go anywhere and do anything built him into something extraordinary. Then came the break. In 1984, Bob had landed a role as a fill-in engineer at Calliope Studios in Manhattan. The studio's owner asked him to cover a session while another engineer was on vacation. The group recording that day was Stetsasonic. He impressed them so much that they kept him on. He helped to engineer their breakthrough debut album, On Fire, released in 1986 on Tommy Boy Records. That was the door. And once it opened, Bob Power walked straight through it, directly into the orbit of the Native Tongues Collective. The Native Tongues were a loose crew of conscious hip-hop groups, including Tribe Called Quest, De La Soul, Black Sheep, and the Jungle Brothers. They were making music built around intricate, soulful samples, jazz loops, live bass lines, jazz breakbeats, and they needed an engineer who could hear what they were going for, and Bob Power could hear it. In 1990 and 1991, Bob Power sat behind the boards for a Tribe Called Quest sophomore album. The result was The Low End Theory, released in September of 1991. There's no overstating what this album did. The Low End Theory didn't just top charts. It redefined what hip-hop was allowed to sound like. It showed that hip-hop could be jazz, that it could breathe, that the bass didn't have to sit in the back. It could carry the whole record. And at the center of that sonic revolution was Bob Power. He described that album as hip-hop's Sgt. Pepper's, meaning it was the record that changed everything that came after it. He had a gift for isolating, cleaning, and blending samples with surgical precision, while letting the live bass from Tribe's Ron Carter collaboration sit on top of the mix rather than under it. Questlove, who knows a thing or two about how records are made, put it perfectly. He said that before Bob Power, hip-hop was chaotic and muddy, beautiful in its own way, but raw. Bob Power came in and brought clarity without taking the soul out. Bob was the king of the low end, Questlove wrote. Drums crispy and loud, but the bass is full. That's a master at work. Through the mid-1990s and into the 2000s, Bob Power became the invisible hand behind another foundational movement, the Soulquarians. This was the creative collective centered around artists like D'Angelo, Erykah Badu, The Roots, Common. They were making neo-soul music that was warm, analog, and deeply rooted in Black musical tradition. And Bob Power was in the room for almost all of it. He engineered D'Angelo's Brown Sugar, the record that launched one of the most celebrated careers of modern R&B. He was behind the boards for Erykah Badu's Baduizm, an album Badu herself called the most bass-heavy singing album in history. And she credited Bob Power for that. You taught me so much, she wrote when the news broke. He engineered multiple Roots albums, including Do You Want More and the classic Things Fall Apart. Black Thought literally shouted him out by name on Distortions to Static. Coming to New York to mix is Bob Power with the snares and kicks to fix. He worked on Commons like Water for Chocolate. He worked on Jay Dilla's The Shining. He worked on Run DMC's Down with the King. This man was everywhere, quietly shaping the records that would define a generation. He worked on Michelle Ndegeocello's Peace Beyond Passion, which earned him his first Grammy nomination for Best Engineered Album. He worked on India.Arie's Acoustic Soul, earned him a Grammy nomination for Album of the Year, and yet most people never knew his name. This is the nature of greatness from the engineer's chair. The goal is to serve the music, not the credit. In 2006, Bob Power made one more pivot. He joined the faculty at NYU's Clive Davis Institute of Recorded Music at the Tisch School of the Arts, and he taught there for nearly 2 decades. He retired just last year in 2025 with the title of Arch Professor Emeritus. The chair of the Clive Davis Institute, Nicholas Sansano, said something beautiful when the news broke. He said that the flood of tributes from students and colleagues was remarkable, not for what people didn't say, but for what they did. Nobody talked about Bob Power's awards or his wealth or his platinum records. Everyone talked about Bob Power, the man, his patience, his generosity, his enthusiasm, the way he sat with a young engineer and walked them through every button on the console. He called himself a sonic midwife, someone whose job was to help artists bring their vision into the world. That philosophy, that humility is rare, and it made him one of the greatest teachers the music industry has ever had. When news of his passing broke, the tributes poured in from every corner of the music world. DJ Premier wrote RIP to one of the illest engineers of all time. Erykah Badu wrote, "What a great loss for the community today. Our community will forever say your name." Questlove called him their training wheels for how to present music. Killer Mike, Citizen Cope, Young Guru, artists and engineers who span genres and generations all took to social media to honor him. And that breath of mourning tells you everything. Bob Power wasn't just a hip-hop engineer. He wasn't an R&B engineer. He was a music engineer in the deepest and most complete sense of the word. Bob Power is survived by his sister, the same sister whose guitar he picked up as a young boy, the one that started all of this. There's something poetic about that. A life of music that began with a borrowed instrument and ended having shaped the sonic identity of a genre, and perhaps a generation. To her and to all of Bob's loved ones, the music community mourns with you, and we are so grateful that he was in this world. Here's the thing about Bob Power. He could have chased the fame. He had the credentials, he had the ear, he had the relationships, but he chose to be in service to the music, to the artists, to the students, the craft. This is a rare kind of life, and it produced a rare kind of legacy. Every time you press play on the Low End Theory, you'll hear him. Every time you get lost in Baduizm, he's there. Every time a young engineer sits down at a mixing board and asks, "What does this button do?" they're asking because somebody like Bob Power made it okay to ask. Rest easy to Bob Power. The low end will keep dumping in your honor. If this video moved you, please share it with someone. Bob Power definitely deserves his flowers. Hit that like button, consider subscribing to the channel, and click that bell icon so you guys never miss an upload. And be sure to drop a comment with your favorite record that Bob Power has ever touched. Thank you guys so much for watching. I truly appreciate y'all. Peace.